Yeah, a lot of what we see from our government officials is apparently scripted. They read a nice teleprompter, but yeah, the fire is now out. There's millions of people in America that heard that and said, "Oh, it's over. Everything's great. I'll go down and get a job at this new factory being built." Okay, we will be back in 3 minutes here on, or 6 minutes here on The Real News with Farron and Brian. We are back on The Real News Radio with Farron and Brian. We are joined today with Doyle Shamley. It's an honor to have you join us today on The Real News. How are you doing today, sir?
Real good. How about you?
Doing great. And as we remember the life and death of Bill Cooper to begin today, I just wanted to tell you I have always regarded Mr. Cooper as a great messenger of the truth. And to begin, I'd just like for you to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and tell us what it was like working with Mr. Bill Cooper and what you've been doing since his death in 2001.
Well, again, my name's Doyle Shamley of Hour of the Time. That is really Bill's, I guess you would say, hallmark creation. He became famous with his book, Behold a Pale Horse, which is still, to this day, in the top 10, what you call the underground book category, and that even is on the major places like Amazon. What it was a work of writing, as Bill had worked throughout his career in the military, and then when he left the military after Vietnam, he was a highly decorated combat veteran, and he was in the intelligence arm of the Navy as well, Air Force first, then he joined the Navy. He saw and read several documents and went and did several briefings that showed him there was a large problem out there coming from behind the scenes within our own country. So he wrote his book, Behold a Pale Horse, and started the show, and which our website and broadcast has been named after since 1993, Hour of the Time. Now, we began sharing, Bill and I, that is, began sharing research in the mid-90s, 95, 96, back and forth. I was involved in the same areas, just a generation behind him was it, as far as our ages. And what we would do is, we both had massive libraries, not had, we still have. Our libraries are some 15,000 volumes of research. And we would share research back and forth. I was still in the Army, and I was holding classes nightly in the barracks as a platoon sergeant on the New World Order, the Federal Reserve, etc., to the troops. Now, of course, that went over about like a lead balloon. And when Clinton got into office, there was a cleansing out in the military of any of us that were strongly pro-American at the time, or veterans / very pro-American sovereignty and the Republic and Constitution, through the cutbacks. They targeted the veterans intentionally in the cutbacks, which I was one also. They targeted any of us who spoke out. Michael New was not the first person to do what he did. He just was the one who became famous. There was thousands of us who did the same thing. And they began targeting us during the cutbacks. Well, at that time, I could see that even though I was being groomed for a command sergeant major position and whatnot, that everything was going nowhere in that career. And like I used to joke about, the Army, I joined one Army and enlisted in another, is what had happened. So I left, and being single and no dependents or anything at the time, and once you're a veteran, you can break contract as well, as far as your enlistment terms. So I just, after the final go-around, which was out in a live-fire field exercise in Northern California, being surrounded, me and many of my best soldiers that I had with me as squad leaders, assistant platoon sergeants, fellow platoon sergeants, whatnot, we were literally surrounded all of a sudden by this whole group of field grade officers, which is major or above, and they started hassling us. We're going to court-martial you for sedition. It was bizarre. And they made stupid comments. This shows you the mentality in the upper commands. Like, well, we bet you guys all got rebel flags hanging in your garages. You know, just ignorant crap like that. So I notified my commander on a Saturday, turned in everything on Sunday, and moved in here by Wednesday with Bill. And the studios were out of the home. The home was hardly a home, except for your bedroom. It was more of a work center. The living room, everything, and a large office, very large offices added onto the home, and a studio, etc. And we broadcast out of there nightly. And then in 2001, well, it started in 98 when he had got an attempted service, mind you. Now, we were there having a barbecue, which was something we did quite commonly in the backyard, and we could look down the hill at the only road approaching, and it was FBI so-called special agent Steve Fillerup coming up the hill. We had run-ins with him already. He was on what is still nowadays around the militia task force, they call it, and we waved him, and he stopped down there, and we had to yell back and forth, and he said he just had an envelope to hand us, and we wanted to talk about things and blah, blah, blah. We ran him off the property, and the next day the U.S. Federal Marshal showed up. They realized, because one of our specialties, besides the mystery schools doctrines, is federal jurisdiction, or lack thereof. We notified them they had no jurisdiction on the property. They even admitted it and stepped back out clear past the center line of the public road. So all you people who think that that stuff is untrue, it does work. And we were actually never served. But they had these trumped up, the typical IRS tax evasion charges. And that went on and on. Bill had to basically isolate himself completely. I lived there with him, etc. The last maybe 9 months of his life, I moved just below and down the ways we could see each other from our yards, and still did the programming and the mail, groceries, meals, everything with him. I just slept in my own house was the only difference. And on November 6th, he was essentially assassinated. It was a completely set-up ordeal, and the tactical team, when they called the local police after Bill was dead, mind you, at pushing 1 in the morning of November 6th, and woke up the police chief, and he then called his only lieutenant and sergeant. It's a small town. And they went up there for the briefing. They were told point blank. They had planned that no matter what occurred, Bill was not going to be allowed back in his house alive, because they did not want a Waco or Ruby Ridge standoff with the news.
And Mr. Cooper had alluded to the fact that he thought this type of scenario very well may play out. We've got about 3 minutes before we go to break, Mr. Shamley. On June 28, 2001, Mr. Cooper had reported to the world that there would be a false flag event and Osama bin Laden would be blamed. Do you think this played a heavy part in the assassination of Mr. Bill Cooper by his local sheriff's department?
I would have to say so, because the thing about this, Aaron, is that, granted, you didn't know me at the time, obviously, but there's several people out there that did, that claimed to go get this report and that report, some so-called talk show host, etc. And that's an absolute lie that spread rumors about what occurred to Bill on that day. Because when I went and did the FOIAs and the public records request and did get every single report starting that day, filled out all the paperwork on the 6th, and they started coming in, I get to see the list of who all's requested it. That's the law. And all these big talkers out there never even read the stuff and spread rumors. On page 3 of the Department of Public Safety State Final Report, page 3, the original attack was planned for September 11th.
Wow.